Hello, and welcome to the Intel Brief, your daily intelligence briefing on global geopolitics. Today is Tuesday, 10 September. I'm your host, Daniel, the founder of HM Intelligence, and every weekday we bring you not just the news, but the so what from the events and decisions that shape our world. So grab a coffee and get ready to be informed. In today's update, we'll be covering an EU top court has ruled against Apple and Google. An Israeli airstrike has killed dozens in a humanitarian zone. And Kim Jong Un vows to ready nuclear force for combat with the US. So firstly, the European Court of Justice has ruled that Google violated antitrust laws and Apple must pay $13 billion in back taxes to the European Union. These cases are part of a broader effort by the EU to address tax loopholes and anti-competitive practices of major US tax companies. Google's case dates back to 2017, when it was accused of prioritizing its own Google shopping links over competitors, which the EU deemed discriminatory. Despite Google's appeal, the court upheld the €2 billion fine, and Google responded by stating that they had already made changes in 2017 to comply with EU regulations. Apple's case dates back to 2016, when it was accused of receiving unlawful state aid from Ireland, resulting in a tax deal that allowed them to avoid billions in taxes. Apple argues that the taxes in question should be primarily payable in the US and initially won a court ruling against the EU's Commission in order to pay back the taxes. However, after years of legal battles, the ECJ has now ruled in favour of the EU, requiring Apple to pay $13 billion. Both rulings against Google and Apple are final and cannot be overturned. So what? I think the saying goes, the US invents it, China copies it, and the EU regulates it, and this seems to be another case of that. While the EU is seen to be the centre of regulation, there are numerous countries within the EU that allow companies to avoid paying large amounts of tax, despite the numerous efforts to stop this, particularly through the standardisation of corporate tax. However, they still appear to be struggling. Yet cases such as these are likely to be seen as test cases for how things will play out for the majority of companies that can't afford the high-paying lawyers that Google and Apple can. Now it is time to take a look at how many companies move their EU headquarters to avoid similar legal action and where they move their companies to. And next, an Israeli airstrike on a designated humanitarian zone in the southern Gaza Strip has killed at least 40 people and injured a dozen more, according to Gaza's civil defense authorities, who are controlled by Hamas. The strike targeted Khan Yunis, which has been identified by the Israelis as a humanitarian zone. The local civil defense chief confirmed the death toll, and both the Hamas-linked Shabib news agency and the Fatah-linked Wafa news agency corroborated the reports of 40 fatalities. The impact of the strike caused extensive damage, with over 20 tents catching fire and a crater up to 9 meters deep left in the area. In response, the IDF stated that the target was a Hamas command center, accusing Hamas of using human shields within the civilian and humanitarian infrastructure. Hamas has denied the presence of their fighters, calling the claims a blatant lie. The IDF further alleges that Palestinian militant groups have consistently exploited these humanitarian zones for use for terrorist activities against Israel. The incident adds to the escalating conflict, deepening the humanitarian crisis in the area. So what? It'll be interesting to see what comes of the strike. Numerous commentators online have mentioned how the strike is abnormal, both in its use of munitions and the area targeted, and have speculated that the targets must have been key figures within the Hamas military leadership. However, the strike will likely come at the cost of significant public backlash. Even if the IDF can show clear signs that they hit a military target, the general public will likely still criticize them. Yet it appears likely that Israel no longer cares about the opinion of the general international community, so long as they maintain US support, something that does not appear to be wavering. And lastly, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has announced plans to exponentially increase the country's nuclear arsenal, aiming to have it combat ready against the United States and its allies. Speaking during an event marking the country's founding anniversary, Kim emphasized that North Korea must enhance its nuclear capabilities to ensure the security of the state. His statement reflects ongoing tensions with the United States and South Korea, particularly in response to their joint defense strategies that integrate American nuclear weapons with South Korea's conventional forces. Kim criticized the US-led expansion in the region, labeling it a grave threat to North Korea's security. Experts believe that Kim's rhetoric signals the possibility of provocative weapon tests, potentially timed around the US presidential elections. Since 2022, North Korea has ramped up its missile testing significantly to advance its nuclear program. While the country still faces technical hurdles in developing long-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching the US mainland, analysts have suggested that it already has the capability to hit key targets within South Korea and Japan. The announcement follows rising tensions over the growing involvement of the United Nations Command in South Korea, which includes Germany's recent addition to the multinational force aimed at defending the South in the event of war. So what? It is possible that North Korea has been receiving technical support from Russia as part of their deal to supply ammunition to the Russian military for its conflict in Ukraine. Sadly, while South Korea and Japan currently live in a world where they can rely on US support, the outcome of the upcoming US elections might change that. In which case, this could lead to a possible arms race in the region, significantly increasing tensions. Thank you for listening to the Intel Brief, your daily intelligence briefing on global geopolitics, brought to you by HM Intelligence. If you want to support the podcast, tell your friends to help them stay informed and leave us a 5-star review. Or if you want to learn more about intelligence, why not take one of our courses? They're all online, self-paced and affordable. Thank you for listening. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you next time.